everybody, it's Drybear. A developer stream just went on for the last Epoch, going over the stats for Season 2, what they've seen in the first opening week, and a little bit afterwards, as well as answering questions live from chat, discussing future features and that sort of thing. So what I'd like to do, as I do for many games, is recap that dev stream, as it was kind of very informal, very impromptu, and the developer Mike was playing live while answering questions, so it was very scatterbrained, but also had some good info in it overall. So let's dive in. Starting with the cool, handy dandy infographics they released for the first week stats of last Epoch. So with the launch of Season 2, a total of just about 1 million travelers created, so characters created, and they had a peak of 150,000 on Steam. And I think this kind of bodes well for the growth of last Epoch, and I can't imagine how excited they were to go from this very long internal dev cycle, where normally it's not this long, like it's over a year since they launched. They finally got a new major update. They still did cycles and updates and balance and things like that, but this is their first big major patch since their full release and the 1.1, which is super cool. And they got, you know, 1 million players making in the new season, not just owning the game, but also in the new season and Steam. So hopefully this encourages them to move towards console, because they could easily take that 150K on Steam and turn that into another 300 to 400K on console as well, putting them over 500,000 concurrent, which would be really, really great. They have the gamepad support, they have the WASD support. Now it's time to get the console version working. Now, a couple days ago, I did a class popularity measurement of the data, and it kind of reflected this already, so this shouldn't come as a surprise for people that watch my channel. But if you're just happening to land on this video, this is what they showed off as the most played classes in Season 2, with 49% being Sentinel, which is a combination of Sentinel being the new hotness, a bunch of reworks and reworked abilities and buffs and quality of life changes, which is super great. But also I'd argue that the two strongest, actually the three strongest builds in the game right now are probably all Sentinel. I would say there's 2 Void Knight builds that are incredibly powerful, and then the Judgment Paladin is probably in the 3rd slot there. So we're seeing a lot of people play those. So 49% Sentinel, 21% Rogue, 12% Acolyte, and then Primalist and Mage tied at 9% at the very bottom. But you're probably seeing a lot of this with the amount of guide content and the people just trying the new hotness. It's actually, I would say, the easiest, you'll have the easiest time killing Uber Aberroth with probably the Erasing Strike Void Knight build, but that just kind of goes to show how much it's like fad or famine for a lot of people in these games. They also showed that 9.2 million tombs have been raided and 3.8 million cemeteries have been delved, which is kind of interesting. I figured that the tombs would be many factors higher, but it looks like just above double the amount of cemeteries to tombs. And the fact that tombs can exist in basically every echo on your web, whereas cemeteries are a specific type of echo you have to enter in from the start. So I would have thought that the tombs rated would be way higher, not just double compared to cemeteries, but you kind of need cemeteries to place echo down, so maybe the importance is there. And honestly, this number spread tells me that there probably are a lot of people that are just doing cemeteries and echoes, and they might actually be skipping a lot of the tombs as well. They do add time to your echo clear time, though they do count for stability gains. Unless you're going for something specific, it may just be that people really prefer doing cemeteries only and only do tombs when they're convenient or they're not yet finished with the echo or something like that. Let me know what you think about the usage of tombs and what your play style is if you're on especially empowered timelines. Are you actually going into tombs every single time, or are you only going through them strategically? Next, they say that over 500,000 legendary items have been crafted. I'm guessing this doesn't include like Nemesis Egg or like random events like that or forges. I'm guessing this is actually just like, slamming and exalted into a unique, or potentially even using the Weaver's Will. I don't know. The number seems smaller than I would expect. So maybe this is only like manually crafting the legendaries, but still that's quite a lot of legendaries crafted. And hopefully at least some of those were insanely powerful for people in the game. Next up is a pretty shocking revelation here. Even at this point, pushing like 2 weeks past the launch, the total number of players who have killed the Uber version of Aberroth is only 471. So we're not even in 4 digits there. A lot of these people, I'm guessing, are Void Knights or Paladins, but in general, the Uber Aberroth fight has proven to be quite challenging, not only to get to, like to get that high of corruption and get a gear that's working really well and actually do all the harbingers and all the steps you need to unlock Uber Aberroth and regular Aberroth, but even just getting him down, it's 471 total. So I'd say this is a pretty big success for a pinnacle boss. He's very challenging, and the number represents that with only 471 kills currently. However, that being said, even though 471 Uber Aberroth kills have been recorded, Uber Aberroth has killed 358,000 travelers right now. So very high death rate, very low success rate. That's a pinnacle boss. Let me know what your experience is with the Uber Aberroth overall. Then Ghost, as we know, is very powerful, and Radamasa, the curse, which I think that's a champion, actually, and a very dangerous one at that. But a lot of deaths between Ghost and Radamasa, though the cake taker right now is Uber Aberroth, killing a ton of people. Then, even less than the number of players who have killed Uber Aberroth is the total players who died at level 1. I didn't even know this is possible, but I guess you can actually die at level 1. Maybe it's people doing like a level 1 challenge or skipping the first zone too fast, but 392 deaths at level 1 have been recorded. And lastly, more so than the amount of tombs raided, is 10.6 million normal mode player deaths, as well as 163,000 hardcore player deaths. So kind of interesting for the stat drop there. So that covers the cool stat drop with the infographics that they dropped on the stream. Now let's go through some of the offhand Q&A they went through with some pretty exciting stuff coming out of that. The first one being a very important topic, at least to my heart, is that they have added in the WASD or WASD system where you can move around, which is huge. I think this should be more standard in more ARPGs. However, it was asked a very important question you can see on my screen right now. In the bottom left, the left click operation as a keybind is exclusive for this kind of like dynamic move or attack object system that they have. However, especially with the addition of WASD, many players, myself included, would love to just replace and keybind an ability to left mouse button on keyboard and mouse, because you're moving with WASD. You don't need to click to move anymore. Can we please regain that button as a general unlock for keybinding abilities? And this is what they had to say.
We're working on specific upgrades to WASD, including control options for left click. So like being able to set move only on there, being able to set interact only, like all these different styles that people might have. It's just something we didn't consider enough options as something people were going to try and do.
Which I think is a huge win. There's definitely some things, I mean, I'm playing a pure melee build right now with Spellblade, and there's definitely things that I wish I could use on left click, so that's already a big victory for last Epoch players. Another one I want to highlight is the question around reporting players. We're seeing a ton of, I mean, with the game getting bigger, right? A bigger CCU, more people playing last Epoch, with a combination of factors from other ARPGs having weaker seasons, but also people just having interest in the game overall, is now, because there's a renewed interest in the game, there is a renewed supply of bots. You'll probably find gold sellers, RM tiers, tons of spam in chat over this now. And so there's a question of, you can right click and block, like even in the footage I'm showing you, there's an MMO EXP cheap gold sale in chat right now. There was a question of, can we not just right click on a player and block them, but can we actually report them?
All right, so first question, any chance of getting the ability to report rather than just block the people spamming about RMT? We're discussing it internally right now. You can't see my chat fully. It's hidden behind me mostly, but you may see me randomly ban people throughout the stream. Yeah, we definitely get the pain point that's there, and ideally we want to try and get rid of it completely, because it is like even seeing one sucks.
So that's good news that they're at least looking into that and trying to make it better. There's obviously, when it comes to player reports and support related things, it is a more campaign, focused kind of interaction. We have to make sure you all your ducks in a row and there's no major abuse points, but obviously you don't want gold sellers in your chat constantly. The next one is a big question because something that has been plaguing last Epoch for a long time is the efficacy and value of set items and set bonuses. Because exalted items and subsequently legendary items, which are unique items that have exalted stats on them, generally just outperform everything. It has been a long-standing thing where people just don't use set items. And with Season 2, we got the ability to dismantle set items into a shard that can be used to place that set stat onto another item to activate sets to be more useful. However, a lot of people, myself included, still feel like sets are just not as good as they can be, and what can be done or what is being talked about now to make sets more viable for late game builds in the future.
How do you guys feel about set changes? I feel like as cool as shattering sets are, it still doesn't match up to strong LP unique. Yeah, there's pure power wise, they are still on the low end. Overall, most of the sets were fairly conservative, and we tried to bump up some power on some of them here and there. I think it's something that we're gonna be looking into for expanding the system and getting more like, hey, this is designed as an end game focused set type stuff that we're gonna be building into the game as we go.
Another nice W there. Hopefully they keep expanding that system. I think the shard system for sets is a step in the right direction, but still hasn't kind of made it fit considering how powerful endgame crafting is in last Epoch. So it might be just, still on maybe a season 3 kind of thing. Next up, they were asked about the success of Heartseeker being added to the game, as well as some of the ability reworks for Sentinel, for example, and what their plans are for adding new skills going forward and what the pace is going to be. And the synopsis there is that they're not going to be adding skills just because, or because there's a gap in the skill list. They want the skills to be well received like Heartseeker has been.
Will the new skills ever be added to classes with updates? Thank you. Yeah. Oh yeah. We're gonna be adding in new skills into the game. We added one this season. We've got I know we've got one planned for next season. Can't tell you anything about it yet, mostly because it's not fully designed yet. But yes, we are working on new skills. And just to be clear as well, the like the gaps that are here, like there's one missing there, there's one missing here, there's one missing here. Like those things are great places for us to target for new skills, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee those are the exact places that new skills will come. We're gonna put new skills where they fit the best, have the biggest impact, and just, like we're not gonna shoehorn something into a spot in case, like just for symmetry or something like that.
Which sounds like going forward, as hopefully the seasons come faster than, every 14 months or something like that. I know they like to have cycles in between, but it seems like their plan going forward is to have a brand new skill to add every season. There's definitely plenty of gaps on all the classes and all the masteries to find a new skill every single season. And I think the addition of Heartseeker was great, and if they can keep doing that, all the better. Another interesting topic is it was asked if they could have, what most isometric 3/4 games have nowadays, which is the ability to play around with your crosshair or your cursor. This is a little less important, but still valuable if they do a console version, but I think they definitely want to try and improve that because every major top-down game has it, making the cursor bigger, changing its color. Everyone has different perspectives on color blindness or what stands out to them. Some people like to have a puke green cursor, some people have like bright pink, some people want black or white, some people want big or small. So having the ability to scale it there. Interestingly enough, I think they are actually on Unity, which makes some of the canvases that play around with that a little weird, but they seem to be kind of struggling with the implementation of multiple cursors.
All right, will we get an option to resize and recolor the mouse cursor? If we can figure out how to do it, absolutely. This is something we've been trying to do for 6 years. We would love to be able to do it. Unfortunately, when you like build a game, when you like take the game from the engine and you package it together so that it can be released, it's called like making a game build. And like that package is what gets sent out to Steam, and my goodness, I just got crushed. Getting a bigger mouse cursor is something and like a different size and color options is something we would really like to do, because we know it's something that a lot of people have a tough time tracking the mouse cursor. But we are really pleased with the size of the default mouse cursor, but we know that some people want to make it bigger, and so we would love to be able to increase the size. But when the game gets built, the cursor that's set then is the cursor, and we can't do anything to change it after that point. So we still have to find.
So if it's been a request for a long time and they can't seem to do it, it might just be a Unity problem or just the way they've set up their UI and overlays and everything. It probably won't be happening maybe ever. Generally things that last this long that don't ever get implemented or fixed because there's some kind of technical limitation or major resistance to it, but hopefully one day they get it, because I know I would also love to play around with the cursor in the game in general. Next, we got an explicit answer, the imprinting system that you get on your Weaver's tree, where you can put in items and then have the game have higher chances of dropping them under certain conditions. There's been a lot of theories being thrown out on how that functions, but we actually got a direct answer from Mike here on exactly how it treats the imprints of the items that go into it.
When imprinting uniques, does having LP or a slammed stats from Temporal Sanctum affect the outcome of when an imprint of that item drops? Yes, it does. They're treated exactly the same. So if you have a 2 LP item or a legendary item of the same type with 2 legendary stats on it, like I'm not wearing any, but like this as the 1 LP item version and this as the, if I slam something onto this, are treated identically in that system. So it doesn't care what's slammed on there. It is as though it was not slammed. So you can use, this question usually comes from, can I use failed Nemesis uniques that just got random stats that I don't want anymore in that to try and drop fresh ones that have LP on it? Yes, you can do that. Just keep in mind that if you are doing an item, if you got those legendary stats onto a unique that is a very high tier unique, like a red ring, for example, let's say, the chances of it having LP at all do still scale with like that unique item's relative legendary potential level. Nailed it.
Next, the obvious question of what's going on with Sentinel, because I think a lot of people, especially just in online games now, there's just been a lot of like, they nerfed my favorite build, this got ruined, I can't play it anymore. There was some very honest and expected questions of like, hey, are you going to be nerfing Void Knight or Paladin? What's the plan there? If 49% of players are playing Sentinel, can we expect Sentinel to be nuked from orbit? And what's your philosophy going into that? So here is what they said.
After a week, what are your overall thoughts on class balance? Are you happy with where Sentinel is, or other classes that may seem to be underperforming also brought to the same level? Yeah, I think Sentinel in general is overperforming right now. I think that's pretty clear. Like the while popularity is not the only important metric when deciding if something is overpowered, it can be an indicator of where to look. Almost half the player base is playing Sentinel right now, 49%, which is huge. And I think this is the first time Acolyte's ever been out of the top 2. I'm a little surprised at how crazy representative Sentinel is there. But there's a lot of people playing Sentinel right now, which is cool. And like a lot of that is just because, hey, it's the new thing. And when we make a big change to something, a lot of people play the new thing. And if it's also really strong, a lot of people play the new thing. I don't think anyone's surprised to hear that we're looking at it for probably some targeted nerfs to rebalance some things for next season. I mean, it's a long way away still. I think getting closer and closer to getting things into a good place balance-wise, but it is, there's always going to be something that's a little bit better than something else. And even if that gap is very, very tiny, you're still going to see a disproportionate number of people playing those. Can you touch on the team's approach to nerfing? I hope it's more of a fine-tuned approach than a sledgehammer approach. A D4 makes builds useless after. Yeah, there's sometimes a really fine line between a delicate touch and a clumsy bonk. I don't know what you want to say the two options are. And I think there's definitely been times that we've made adjustments and they've been overcorrections or undercorrections. They don't quite have the effect you expect them to in the long run. When something is powerful and people are having fun with it and they enjoy the build and they enjoy the play style, and it's something that they're like, people really love playing this way. And it's like, say it's way more powerful than everything else. The goal is not to say, hey, this build everyone loves because they enjoy that way of playing the game. But it's too powerful, so we're gonna nerf it into the ground. That's not what we look at it at all like. It's, hey, there's this build that people really enjoy playing. partially because it's very powerful, partially because it plays fun. How do we make it so that people still really enjoy playing it? It's still really powerful, but no one has these calls of like, it's OP, nerf it, that sort of thing. And so it's getting it just under the line of people calling it OP. That's the goal. Like as close to that line as possible. That's always the goal when we're trying to nerf a build.
Which I think is actually a very kind of measured response that a lot of people would be happy with in general, as far as, well, there's Radamasa, that a lot of people would be excited about. Is just the idea of, you want players to feel powerful, you just only want to remove or balance things in it like a downward force if it's causing problems. And it could just be, you could argue that I imagine most of the Uber Aberroth kills were probably all on either a Paladin or a Void Knight this season. But also I think there's just, you know, there was over a year, more if you count the closed beta or closed testing for the game, there was over a year of people just having trouble making viable Sentinel builds that struggled quite a bit. So I think it was actually, you know, kind of good for them to kind of take this approach. And it seems like they're not going to be making any Sentinel, like major Sentinel changes until going into Season 3, which he admits is a ways off. So it could be that just, you know, people are just going to have fun with Sentinel this season in Season 2, and then in Season 3 they'll look to bring up some of the lower playstyles and bring down some of the more powerful options. Next, let's talk about some questions that came up over comparisons to Path of Exile 2. There are some really awesome changes to like just systems and features that Path of Exile 2 introduced with its launch that I think a lot of ARPGs are looking at and probably getting pressure from externally of like, hey, please add this to your game because it's awesome. WSD is one of them. They've already looked at that, but there are some other topics that have come up on the side of last Epoch that were questioned. The first one was you get a lot more fluidity in the way that movements work in Path of Exile 2, being able to cancel animations, not having to pay the full animation time. There are animation cancels in basically every ARPG, and last Epoch is no exception, being able to, you know, holding down a button versus being able to spam it, that sort of thing. But the question was brought up of, can we actually get more flexibility in the attack animation duration and the actual animation time of the ability, and potentially even making more of the abilities like Path of Exile 2, you know, more comfortable to use while you're moving, rather than forcing you to stand still and pay the full animation, or, you know, 60% of it without animation canceling in the gameplay, which might be a subtle thing for some people that may not notice between newer games like Path of Exile 2 and last Epoch, but is, at least in my opinion as an ex-dev, a kind of an interesting discussion.
I know we're looking at some animation changes that will allow us to, when an ability starts, when you press an ability, there is a little period of time where you are, if you just hold move and attack, you can see there's a little period of time where you're unable to do anything. And that little bit of time, a lot of times, is dictated by the animation length. Sometimes on heavier abilities, it's put in there specifically for a better feel of the ability to give it a little more weight and that sort of stuff. The actual, you know, like, it's just too powerful to spam it that quickly, that sort of thing. Having attack speed affect that is kind of the really important thing. And the reason why some abilities don't allow attack speed to affect that is because there's a movement component associated with it. So if there's a movement component associated with it, attack speed can't affect that time. But there's also animation requirements that cause it to have a certain minimum amount of time in there as well. And so we are updating the animation system to allow that time to be a lot more flexible from the animation side, so it becomes just a gameplay thing on how long we want it to be in there. But having everything be possible to be moved used while moving along the same lines as PoE2 does would require a very substantial change to the whole movement and ability usage system. That it's like the scope on something like that is kind of like, would you like us to have, like, we could have done that and there's no updates to the Monolith Last League type thing. Like, it's a really huge thing, and the amount of content we can add to the game instead of doing something like that is makes budgeting that time for it very difficult to justify.
Which I've actually had this exact conversation on many projects on systems that were very old that could be monetized, but the amount of content that uses those systems becomes so difficult to manage that if you were to update the system, you'd have to go and backroll, update everything. It's like the same thing why Final Fantasy XIV has said they're not doing new races, and why some games are limited in the weapon types they add and stuff like that. It just becomes a big case of like, so much is built on it that changing it becomes damaging. But I'll ask it to you because I'm curious how many players out there are actually noticing that little pause, that little step you have to make forcibly, or if they've just adjusted their gameplay, and how many people actually care about this sort of thing going into Last Epoch versus not. Is this on your radar, even though it's being asked, or is this something that you just generally don't care about? The next PoE2 feature that is awesome, and honestly, it still trips me up when I like need to stand up for a reason. I hit escape while I'm playing Last Epoch and nothing happens, which is the idea of hot pausing even in an online state for Last Epoch. And this is something that is a much more complicated issue that most games are not going to be able to do, at least with very minimal effort. But it is something that's worth talking about because once you get used to it playing in Path of Exile 2, you're like, I really wish I could pause the game so I could get up and do something, or, I get a phone call or someone wants to talk to me, or, someone's at the door, I need to go get my food, or, whatever, I got to, stop to do something. It is very nice to be able to pause, and I think this is exacerbated a little bit by the Last Epoch thing where, instances get deleted very quickly in Last Epoch, so making loot runs back to town is a little bit risky because you might end up losing loot or losing your instance, or you have to re-clear mobs or whatever, just because they're so aggressive about, killing instances that might have stuff on the ground or enemies you're facing, which means you can't just pop back to town as easily or as comfortably as some of the other ARPGs. But this was their response on the idea of being able to pause.
Pausing, yes. So pausing in online is, if we can figure out a way to do that in online, yeah, it's on the list. I'd love it. Please keep asking for it. It's fantastic. I want it. Get it in my game. Do I have a lot of hope for that right now? Not a ton, I'm sorry.
Which tells me, just like the cursor thing, is probably a long way off, if it even happens at all, so you'll just have to deal with it for the time being. Next, there were some really cool feature pitches that were made during the dev stream that they answered, a lot of them that would be really cool. The first one is something that I would love to have, and hopefully they can do it, or at least do some form of it in general. So if you're running the Circle of Fortune faction, where you can, set up yourself little bounties or quests to go do a thing, and when you do a thing you get rewards from that thing from the Circle of Fortune. However, it was asked in the stream, could there be some way to more easily track or represent what prophecies you currently have and how to go get them done? Because obviously there's some people that only target a specific prophecy. They have like half a row or a single row, and there are people that fill up tons of prophecies until they're full and then they go do them. And so that it was asked in the stream, could you maybe have a way of pinning a prophecy so it pops up on your objective list? Hey, go kill, the Sanctum Time Walker, or go kill a rare enemy, or go kill this timeline boss in order to finish the prophecy. And I think it could be even better is if they could just show it on the Echo web or just on the overall map. Like when there's a prophecy that you reward that you can get by doing something, it'll just show a little icon on the map or on the Echo map or on the timeline map that you can actually see, oh, if I go do that one, I can finish the prophecy. That'd be pretty cool.
Anyway, to pin quest from COF or other factions so we can track it while doing monos. Oh, like a prophecy, like pin a prophecy up here, like a quest. I think that's what it says. Like pin a prophecy as though it was a quest. I like that. I think that's a really good idea as like a little reminder. I feel like you probably wouldn't want too many, but being able to do some of them I think would be cool. Because you can get a lot of them, right? Can I even see them in here? Yeah. So like having all of these be able to show up, but like having one you could like star it or something, and it shows up as like tracked. I think that'd be a really cool idea.
Another cool feature that was brought up in the chat, though it's not something that I'm emotionally attached to, but it's this idea that you need to rebuild your stash every single season. I don't think the cycles or seasons in Last Epoch come often enough. It's a major problem. However, one of the things that I love about Last Epoch is how customizable your stash can get and how easy it is to put it together, to organize it exactly the way that you want, and the sheer number of tabs that you can get, because it's not a free-to-play game where you're buying stashes. stash tabs, it is a game you already paid for, and they just give you a crazy amount of tabs because you already paid an upfront price. So I don't know about you guys, but I have tons of tabs every season that I name specifically what I'm looking for, and it's just so nice to have everything super organized. So the idea was, could we actually have a stash tab template that we could take from season to season that we could just fill out? Now, obviously, you have to unlock each tab individually, and they make you pay gold that goes up in price as you go along through the season. But there was this idea of like, could we have can I carry over my stash tab setup from season to season without having to rebuild it every time?
Hi, Mike. Love the changes to the stash. Allows me to set up really nice. Are there any plans or ideas regarding saving a stash setup for new seasons? Oh, I would love this. I can see that it might be somewhat problematic in having to buy tabs, but maybe something like you need 20 tabs to apply this stash configuration. Yeah, there's a lot of pitfalls here of like, oh my god, it caused that problem. But there's a lot of room for awesomeness to happen here too, I think. Because yeah, you may have heard me at the start of this be like brag, not actually bragging, but where I was like, hey, I actually like have my stash set up this time, because usually on stream I don't bother setting up my stash properly. It's just a bunch of like tabs and stuff's just dumped in there. I'm like, I'll figure it out later. And yeah, it's because, you know, there's that little bit, it's not that much extra work to do, but it's enough that it causes me not to do it sometimes. So yeah, I'd love to have a template where it's just like where you can, I don't know exactly how it would look. I think the way it works best is you can set a stash tab template system. So there's like one of the, in the stash system where you have like that little pull down here in the top left corner, and there's like, you can pick the different like legacy stash tabs. One of them is just like stash template, and you can set up the tabs however you want, and you mark them in order, be like, this is the first one, this is the second one, this is the third one, this is the fourth one. And when you go to buy a new tab, it's just like, do you want to buy the next tab and have it auto configure to the next tab in your list of tab configurations that you've set up? And so every time you buy one, it just auto configures as the next one. I think that's the smoothest way to do it.
Which I think would be awesome, and it kind of reminds me of the auto buy system that, you know, games like Dota 2 have, where you can say, this is my full build, this is what I'm looking for. Every time I have the ability to add an item to it and I'm in the well, just go ahead and automatically do it. And I think you could do the same thing for stash tabs if you wanted to. Like, this is my stash tab template, just buy stash tabs when I have the gold, or I choose to do it, and you fill it out. But it's not, you know, it's not going to break the bank. It's not going to make people join or leave the game if they don't already love it or hate it, that sort of thing. But it's kind of an interesting topic altogether. And the last thing that I'll leave you with, since this video is already getting pretty long as it is there was a comment on, hey, you guys did a great job making Sentinel interesting and viable this season. Is there any, you know, is this going to be something that's integrated into your balance strategy and, you know, seasonal update strategy going forward, which I think is a pretty cool comment. Like, you know, with Sentinel being so good, what about the other classes that have, you know, untapped potential that could work? And the reference that was given was the runic invocation builds for mage, which usually end up being a fixed single combination of invocation that they just use over and over. But what about multi-element? What about, you know, doing the true Dota 2 invoker playstyle where you switch between them constantly? And can we apply this to other characters going forward?
Any chance for more unique / passives for Rune Master to support the tri-element multi-invocation playstyle as alternatives to focusing on one rune combination? Well, that was the topic of our runic invocation discussion the other day. So maybe.
So they confirmed they're already working on it, they're already thinking about it, they're already talking about it. So whatever solution that ends up being in the end for season 3, I think it just bodes well for the game. But let me know what you think about this dev stream. Hopefully I made it more, you know, at least more palatable than a full kind of, you know, hot off the cuff style of discussion that they had. And let me know what you think about these responses and the future of Last Epoch season 2, 3, and in the future. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.